Hi there, I'm going to show you how to service your BSA HuMa regulator. These regulators are found in rifles like the BSA Ultra MMC, BSA Scorpion T10, the BSA Scorpion Single Shot, Gamo Dynamax, and the Gold Star SE, the Hornet. So there we go. They fit lots of different BSA rifles. Right, obviously you've removed this from your rifle because it needs a service. When you order a kit from me, you will get 2 small O-rings, a medium-sized O-ring and a large O-ring. And basically that is going to be, the large O-ring is going to replace this one on the outer body. The one small O-ring will be replacing the one on this brass adjuster. The other small adjuster will be on the brass regulator piston, and the medium-sized one will be on the regulator piston. So what you need to do is get a pair of circlip pliers so that you can remove the circlip from inside there. Pop that in, and then out comes the circlip. And then there's a couple of options here. You can either, if you don't have an M3 bolt or screw handy, you can bang it out and the piston will drop out. The other option is to screw your M3 screw or bolt in and pull the piston out. There we go. Right, you'll notice the piston has some bevel washers or disc springs and 2 O-rings. This grey liquid on here is ABS M40 that I use when I'm building regulators. Some of them come with a silicone lube. Right. Obviously, the small O-ring replaces the small O-ring. The medium-sized O-ring replaces the back O-ring. Just a note on the bevel washers. Depending on the pressure setting of your regulator, the pressure range settings, you may have different bevel washers or disc springs. So just pay attention to how they fitted before you start messing with your regulator. In this case, we've got 2 facing that way, 2 that way, and then 2 that way. There's 6 in total in this one. The other thing to note is sometimes, depending on the pressure setting, the actual disc springs may not be the same thickness. So just be wary that when you're taking these off, best to take them off in pairs as they are, and put them in little piles. Don't just rip them all off and mix them up, because you may find that you put back the wrong valves, which will then give it a different characteristic and it may not regulate as you expect. So anyway, that's the piston. Make sure that there's no fluff or dirt or anything on it once you're done. Like I said, you can use something like ABS M50 or a silicone based lubricant on the O-rings. Make sure that's all nice and clean. Make sure the little plastic disc that you can see in there is nicely seated and flat, and then pop that back in. Give it a squeeze to get the O-rings in. Remove your bolt or screw if you've used that, and then you need to put the circlip back in. There we go. Make sure the circlip's seated properly. Sometimes you think it's fitted properly and it's not, and then it pops out in use. There we go, that's in. Right, this next part is basically, if you've serviced your regulator and you're still having issues, then move on to this one. I don't recommend doing this part unless you need to, basically. One thing you can do, sometimes these come with a pressure scale setting on them. Something like these, with numbers on them. Basically, that gives you a fairly good indication, but it is possible to get that wrong. So I would recommend using an accurate device like this digital vernier to measure exactly how much this brass adjuster sticks out of the regulator. In this case it's 2.28 millimeters. and I'm going to double check that just to make sure. 2.2, so obviously I haven't measured it correctly, so I'm going to measure it again. I just need to make sure, it's better to measure 2 or 3 times and make sure that you get it right. 2.25, so somewhere around there. Right, now you can use a flat bladed screwdriver that fits in the slot nicely to remove this. As you can see, it's got a fine thread on it, and there we go. Now you can replace this O-ring with the other small O-ring that was in the kit. Then just make sure this face is nice and clean, that the plastic disc is nice and clean, and then basically you can put some lube on the O-ring if you like, and then it's time to fit it back in. Get your flat bladed screwdriver again. Get roughly to where it was, and basically we want 2.25 again. This is a critical measurement, because if you get it wrong, the pressure setting will be different. So that's 2.09. So we need to back that off a bit. This is another thing to note. If you're undoing it, go past where you think you need to go and then back a bit. Basically, that sorts out the backlash in the threads. So it basically stops you getting random pressure changes. Right, that's a little bit too much, so we need to go in a little bit more. There we go. If you had a pressure scale on here, when you got to the 2.2-ish mark on your thing, you probably don't need to go as far as using the vernier for the last bit, because you could just line it up with the pressure setting that you wanted on the pressure setting sticker. But basically, like I said, if you didn't start off with knowing how far this stuck out, you could be 1 or 2 turns too far in or too far out, which then would mean that the pressure scale sticker means absolutely nothing because you're too far in or too far out. Hopefully that makes sense. So there we go, ready to go back in the rifle. Just in case things go wrong and you've basically messed it up and you can't get it to work properly and you don't know what to do, it's not the end of the world. I do offer a service where you can send me your regulator. I'll strip it completely, replace all the O-rings, I'll replace the plastic disc. I'll then set the regulator back up to the pressure setting that you need for your rifle, and I will ship it back to you. So there we go, thanks very much.